Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you are too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power.
Hotep, which in the language of ancient Egypt means we come with justice in peace. Welcome to Freedom Now, a Saturday Pan-Africanist and Internationalist World Affairs program. Freedom Now is committed to the principle of the rights of all peoples and nations to self-determination. We thank you deeply for your contribution to KPFK, which permits programs like Freedom Now to stay on the air. In this era of corporate acquisition and co-optation of all dissident media, we provide the microphone, challenging their corporate and racist point of view. So stay tuned for Agenda here at Freedom Now.
Fellas, I'm ready to get up and do my thing. I want to get into it, man, you know.
Peace, hoteps, and wisdom to all of our faithful and devoted listeners out there in the radio verse. This is Brother Brandon Sankara, and I want to start things off with a thank you to all of you listeners out there who continue to support Freedom Now. You keep us on our mission and allow us to bring you our agenda for today, Saturday, March 23rd, 2024. We begin with a relay of wisdom coming from Prison Radio as we hear from Baba Mumia Abu Jamal, who's going to pay a special tribute to the revolutionary life and times of Ralph Poynter. After that, our very own Dr. Gerald Horne will be joined on the line by Stephanie Jones-Rogers, Chancellor's Professor of History at UC Berkeley, and for our purposes today, author of the book, They Were Her Problem: White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. This will definitely be some historical knowledge you will not want to miss. Then, in the second half of our program, we'll be sending you over to Block Report Radio, hosted by the People's Minister of Information, JR, who's bringing us an insightful interview with Pierre Labossiere, co-founder of the Haitian Action Committee. This will be some important historical and present-day context on the conflict and ongoing struggles being faced by the Haitian people and the role played by the United States and other world powers in dooming them to their current state of affairs. Now I'm going to be on the ones and twos as we pour this knowledge, making sure your mental cup runneth over with revolutionary wisdom right here to quench your mental thirst on Freedom Now, KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles and KPFK.org, streaming live on the web. To make sure that we stay on a smooth ride with that cultural vibe you know and love, we'll be enjoying a musical bottom featuring Michael Jackson, V. Red, Tina Brooks, Lisa Hilton, and Stacey Rawls. Now, people, get ready for this train a-coming, taking you one step closer to mental liberation, and stay tuned for a special message from Mumia Abu Jamal with Prison Radio, followed by an interview between Dr. Gerald Horne featuring Stephanie Jones-Rogers.
Ralph Poynter, A Revolutionary Life. The English poet William Wordsworth once said, "The child is the father of the man." Rarely has such an anecdote been so true as in the wild rebel life of Ralph Poynter. Poynter, a member of the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, is perhaps best known, at least in recent days, as the man who fought hardest for the freedom of his imprisoned radical wife, lawyer Lynn Stewart. He stood alone in the sweltering Washington, D.C. summer sun for hours with a sign in front of the White House demanding her freedom. But a reflection on his youth shows an unusual child. One of 6 children of the Poynter family in a small steel town in western Pennsylvania called Vandergrift, a few miles from Pittsburgh. His father, George Poynter, was a union organizer there, and little Ralph would actually accompany him when he was just 6 years old. At 12 years old, he took pleasure at playing in the snow, making snowballs and throwing them as far as he could. One day, another union organizer saw the boy throwing snowballs and said to Ralph, "You're pretty good with that snowball, aren't you?" Ralph replied, "Of course. I can hit anything I aim for, no matter how far." The union organizer asked him to climb a hill overlooking the steel mill and explained to the boy that the union was on strike against the mill, and the guys being driven there were scabs or men trying to take union jobs. He then asked Ralph to pack his snowballs with big rocks. Ralph did so. When he asked Ralph if he could throw these rock snowballs at the trucks that stood in front of the mill and hit their front windows, you could almost guess young Ralph's response. Of course. Ralph threw for most of the day and hit exactly what he aimed for. That night, the union organizer went to Ralph's home and told his father that Ralph was very instrumental to the union's success in striking against the mill. Ralph Poynter helped the union before he even became a teenager. When he went to the local elementary school's 3rd grade, he learned what his older brothers had learned years before. That colored boys, well, that's what they called them back then, couldn't go to school without encountering violence, as there were so few colored people in the town. Ralph was beaten, and his new hat and jacket, made by his mother, got messed up. When he saw how sad his mother was at seeing his state, he resolved to end it the next time it occurred. The next day, when his attackers came at him, he didn't run. Instead, he stood his ground and fought back vigorously. Before long, his attackers began to flee. He learned a life lesson about self-defense that would, years later, inform his political. Now the words of Ralph Poynter. Quote, "Black lives have never mattered, except during slavery and other circumstances where money is being made by our labors for others. The modern death penalty, 80% black, moved lynching indoors. The police, as the army of occupation, have taken lynching outdoors again." Unquote. Ralph Poynter. Ralph Poynter, steel worker, elementary school teacher, investigator for his lawyer wife, union brother, revolutionary, returns to his ancestors after 89 winters in America with love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
When will we be paid for the work we've done?
This is Gerald Horne for KPFK, kpfk.org. And with me on the line is Stephanie Jones Rogers, Chancellor's Professor of History at the University of California at Berkeley, author of the award-winning book, They Were Her Problem: White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. Welcome to Freedom Now, KPFK, Stephanie Jones Rogers.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just thrilled to be here talking with you today.
It's a thrill to have you here. So why did you write this book?
Well, I wrote this book out of frustration. I was in graduate school. I was reading a whole bunch of scholarship about the African-American experience in slavery, but also about the experience of white Southern women in the 19th century South. And I realized that the scholars that were working on these two, experiences, these two, what seemed to be in some ways distinct experiences, seemed to have a lot to say about white women's economic investments in slavery, but they were saying something very different about those economic investments in slavery. Those individuals who focused on the experiences of enslaved African Americans said that white women had deep and profound economic investments in the continued subjugation and enslavement of African Americans, while those who focused on the experiences of white Southern women said they had indirect relationships. If they had relationships, they were indirect, they were emotional, they were ideological, they were cultural, but they weren't economic at their base. And I set out to kind of figure out which one of these takes on this question happened to be right. And so out of my frustration with these two seemingly distinct kind of perspectives of white women's economic investments in the institution of slavery, I wrote this book. I wrote a dissertation first to try to get at this question, and then I turned that dissertation into a book. So that's what you alluded to today.
So what were the sulks, S-U-L-K-S? Because apparently they appeared in ads when people were trying to find their runaway Black women enslaved persons.
So when I was, digging deeply into the archives, one of the questions that arose for me is, if white women could participate in the institution of slavery in all the ways that I had found in my research, whether it be the violence of slavery, whether it be, the economic system of slavery, if they could participate fully in those dimensions of slavery, then were they also involved in other kinds of violence against enslaved people? In this particular case, maternal violence against enslaved women especially. And I found out that was actually the case. And this maternal violence, one of the ways this maternal violence manifested, and that I talk about in the book, was through white women's use of enslaved women, enslaved mothers as wet nurses for their white infants. And so not only did they create this demand for enslaved mothers to serve in this capacity, but the demand was so great that a market developed in order to supply them with the enslaved women that they sought to suckle their children. And so in those advertisements, in newspaper advertisements throughout the South, people who had these women that wanted to provide these women or who were looking for these enslaved women to serve in this capacity would often say that they didn't want enslaved women who suffered from the sulks. And the sulks was deep melancholy, a deep depression that came from often being separated from their infants, or being compelled to nurse white women's infants when they had just lost their own. So white Southerners throughout the South would often say they didn't want an enslaved wet nurse that suffered from the sulks, meaning they didn't want them to be depressed or sad or melancholy about what they had to do, because, they thought that these emotions influenced the milk of these women and would thus influence the babies, the infants, the white infants that were at their breasts.
What percentage of slave owners in the South were white women?
So this is some ongoing research that I'm doing, quantitative research. I'm looking at census records to try to get at exactly this question that you've asked me. One of the things that I've done in the meantime, while I'm tabulating those numbers, is look at smaller collections of slave owners' records. And in those slave owners' records, for example, in Washington, D.C., when Washington, D.C. passed the 1862 Emancipation Act, they asked for slave owners to come forward, apply for compensation, and in exchange, they would get money if they were willing to free enslaved people according to this act. Women constituted 40% of the applicants in that data. There were other data sets that I looked at, particularly in South Carolina, and women constituted 38% of the slave owners in that sample, that data sample. So this data is suggestive that women probably constituted about 40% of all slave owners in the South. And this number is borne out by other data. For example, Catherine Hall and a team of historians and scholars at the University of College London similarly looked at British emancipation records and found that women were 40% of the applicants for compensation in Britain as well, when Britain passed the Emancipation Act there. So this is suggestive of a larger pattern. So I think I think I'm pretty confident when in saying that they probably constitute about 38 to 40% of the slave owners throughout the South.
And it seems from your book that this percentage may have flowed from the erosion of primogeniture. That is to say, with the formation of the United States in the late 18th century, a revolt against British practices. This is oftentimes seen as progressive because it facilitated, it supposedly was a blow against a certain kind of class system. But you seem to suggest otherwise. Why is that? And what is primogeniture?
So primogeniture is an inheritance practice, which essentially gives all of a father's land and wealth to the eldest son. And folks like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, we know them well. They graded against this because it meant that folks like them, when they married, if they weren't when they married, that property wouldn't go to their wives. That property would go to their wives' brothers. And so they wanted access to the property. And so they pushed very hard in Virginia to make sure that laws were passed to erode primogeniture, this inheritance practice, so that they could have access to the property that would be coming to their wives if the system was abolished. And so women also had their own motivations. They also saw this as a beneficial step for them too, because they then could have access to this property, and they could then go to the law, go to the courts to see if they could protect that property from the husbands like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. So women actually used the abolition of primogeniture to their own benefit, so that they could access slave ownership in ways that they had not truly been able to access prior to the abolition of primogeniture.
Now, on pages 131 and 149 of your book, they were her property. I've read it as hinting at the sexual abuse of Black male slaves by white women slave owners. Was that a fair inference, or did I misread what you were conveying?
I think that's an accurate reference, an accurate reading of that section of the book. Other scholars, Martha Hodes, for example, at NYU, and recently Thomas Foster, have written books about, the potential of sexual abuse and sexual violence perpetrated against enslaved men at the hands of both white men and white women. And I take up that charge in large part because enslaved people themselves suggested as much. They talked about the fact that, we had to do whatever they told us to do in the context of sexual violence, and they don't exclude enslaved men when they talk about that being compelled to do whatever white women and white men asked them to do or commanded them to do. So that's something that I think is right there in the records. Enslaved people talked about it, formerly enslaved people talked about it, and we should pay more attention to that. And so I try to at least put that, refer to that possibility in the book, because I think we do need to devote more attention to the sexual violence and sexual abuse of enslaved boys as well as enslaved men in this period.
Now, you also speak of white women slave owners, particularly in New Orleans and in Louisiana, as madams, or what we might even call pimps, in their relationships with Black women. Could you elaborate on what you were trying to convey in that section?
Absolutely. So again, as I was looking at records, just trying to figure out exactly how people understood white women's economic investments and investments and in relationships to the system of slavery, I stumbled upon these newspaper advertisements which talked about white women who not only owned enslaved women, but who put them to work in brothels throughout the city of New Orleans. And there were court records that supported these accusations. These women were arrested, or the enslaved women who they had put to work in these establishments had been arrested. And so what I argue in that part of the book, and what I show in that part of the book, is that we tend to think of the slave market as kind of distinct from other kinds of markets. In this particular case, a market in sex and sexual labor, but in places like New Orleans and in the context of slavery, these two markets, they merged. So what you see is that enslaved women are being bought by white women in the slave market, but then they're being put into another market, and which means that women are not profiting from these women's labor just once or twice. They are repeatedly and routinely profiting from the sexual exploitation and violence perpetrated against enslaved women. So they're putting these women to work as prostitutes in their establishments, and by doing so, they're reaping the economic rewards of sexual violence each and every time those women see clients or those girls see clients. So I wanted to draw attention to that because, again, it's not a part of our understanding, a deeper understanding of the sexual violence and the sexual abuse that enslaved women in particular experienced. And here, what I show is that it's far more extensive and it's far more egregious, and that it happened at the hands of white women in particular.
Now, you have a number of loyal readers, including myself, as a result of this book. And so I'm wondering, what are you working on now?
So what I'm working on now is, it takes me back in time, and it takes me across 3 continents. I am working on a book that tries to understand the experience of the British Atlantic slave trade through the perspectives and the experiences of women. So not just enslaved women, but English women, Afro-English women. So it takes me to Britain, it takes me to West Africa, and it takes me back to British North America. So that's the newest project, and it's super exciting. I'm right in the thick of it right now, and so I can't wait for it to be published and for folks to get their hands on it.
Now, it just occurred to me another question that I'm sure our audience would be interested in hearing your response, which is, given the fact that approximately half of women defined as white voted for Donald J. Trump in 2016 and 2020, does your book have any reflection on that, or do you have any reflection on that, or how slavery, that peculiar institution, might have given rise to this phenomenon?
At its core, slavery was about white supremacy. It was a system of white supremacy. So white supremacy was fundamental to that system. And through slave ownership, women had a deep investment in perpetrating white supremacy, in making sure that white supremacy was sustained. The system was sustained, and as a consequence, white supremacy was sustained. So they were deeply invested not just in slavery, but also in white supremacy. And that didn't change when slavery ended. In fact, what I suggest at the end of the book is that white women, when they lost enslaved people, the enslaved people that they owned, they often lost all of the wealth that they had bound up in enslaved people's bodies. And but they doubled down on white supremacy because the system of slavery, one that they benefited from enormously, was no longer there, but white supremacy was. And in fact, they doubled down on white supremacy. They became doubly invested, more deeply invested in white supremacy throughout the 20th century. And we see that, if we look at lynching rituals, when Black men and Black women and children are lynched, there are postcards and photographs of white women being there. They're participants, not only as, so-called victims, but also as partakers of the violent acts and atrocities against formerly enslaved and newly freed African American men, women, and children. They are at the forefront of the anti-integrationist activism of the 50s and the 60s. And, we can go on and on to the present day. January 6th, the insurrection at the Capitol, there were women that were prominently featured there. They were part of the organization of that act. Of that violence. So I think there is a carry, that this deep investment in white supremacy, which starts in settlement, really takes us forward to moments when white women are at the polls. They're voting for Donald Trump, someone who in some ways embodies all that the kind of great white hope, if we want to call it that. And so they deeply invest in white supremacy in the context of slavery, and we see that carry through to the present day. And so I think what we saw when they voted for Donald Trump, when they voted for Roy Moore, when they voted for Brian Kemp in Georgia, was their deeper investment in white supremacy and doubling down on that investment and ensuring that they spoke very deep. I mean, we can even say the deep investment in banning CRT and banning books from schools that talk about race, that talk about gender and sexuality, that all of that is really bound up in this kind of very long history of white women being deeply invested in white supremacy.
Now, finally, Stephanie Jones Rogers, Chancellor, Professor of History, University of California, Berkeley, author of the prize-winning book, They Were Her Property, White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. How do we create the Stephanie Jones Rogers of the future? What is your advice to younger scholars, I should say, who want to walk in your footsteps?
I would say, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I always tell graduate students that when I first applied to graduate school, I didn't get into any of the schools that I applied to, not one. I had to kind of start from scratch. I had to rethink my plans. And so, I didn't succeed at first, but I tried again, and it was the best decision I ever made. I had a long and rocky road to that point, and then it got even rockier when I didn't get into those schools. But, I decided to try again and apply myself, and here I am.
And here you are indeed. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Stephanie Jones Rogers.
Thank you for having
me. This is Sister Flora, and you are listening to Freedom Now at KPFK 90.7 FM in occupied Mexico, including Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, and streaming live on the web at kpfk.org. Today's program, as well as 10 prior editions, can be reheard at kpfk.org/audio archive, and scroll down to Freedom Now. From 12 to 1 p.m., following Freedom Now is her sister Assunta, with Spotlight Africa addressing issues facing Mother Africa. For a truly alternative international perspective on world affairs, check out CCTV China and online at Presna, Latina Cuba Telesur Venezuela, News 24, South Africa, and Press TV Iran.
Welcome back here to Freedom Now on KPFK 90.7 FM. We're going to now send you off to Block Report Radio, hosted by the People's Minister of Information, JR, who's bringing us an insightful interview with Pierre Labossiere.
You are listening to another edition of Block Report Radio with the People's Minister of Information, JR. Today, our honored guest is Pierre Labossiere. He is the co-founder of the Haiti Action Committee. We will be talking about the war, or the U.S.-funded invasion into the island nation, the first Black Republic. How are you, Pierre?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Thank you so much, JR. A pleasure to be on the show with you.
And thank you for coming on. Well, let's get straight into it. 20 years ago, Haiti had a coup d'etat after they elected their first president, which was liberation theologist Father Aristide, who became the first elected president. Can you tell us a little bit about the current day Haitian history and how it led up to today? What were some of the highlights, and how did we get to where we're at today?
The full name is Jean-Bertrand Aristide, and he was a parish priest, Roman Catholic priest. Also, you said it correctly, a liberation theologian. And so the people drafted him to run for office, because throughout the history of Haiti, we've had some good presidents, then we've had a number of terrible ones. And the reason why they were so terrible is because they were serving the interest of a tiny minority, of a tiny economic ruling elite that was really trying to replace the former French colonizers in their repression and exploitation of the Haitian masses. So people had been struggling from the time that they kidnapped our foremothers and forefathers from the African continent to the present day in Haiti in order to change this situation that keeps our people in perpetual misery, first in slavery, then after independence in poverty, and up to today, with the whole series of repression. And so our people struggled under slavery, got rid of slavery, and the masses of our people had a vision for the development of that land. Their vision was based on a land that was now free of colonizers, free of slavery, and they wanted land distribution so that people could collectively work the land as free women, as free men, and that was their vision, to have education for their children, health care for their people, for everyone, and to enjoy the fruits of the land that they had fought and bled on it, and to become the masters of that land. But from the very beginning, there was this attempt by the French colonizers and also others like the U.S., which was beginning to emerge as a power in the region, and Spain. Many of the islands were under Spanish domination, where slavery was practiced. Slavery was in the U.S., and also in England as well. Many of the islands were dominated by the British, and slavery was flourishing. So Haiti was the only land there that didn't have slavery, and all of them were looking at our people and at this land to try to restore slavery and take it over. So Haitians managed to fight off all of these powers and retain their freedom and the abolition of slavery. The reason I bring this up, it's not just that it's the past. Many people say, well, it's some long ago stuff, but it is very relevant to today, because the same mindset of colonizing people, forcing people to work for nothing, treating people as if they are not human beings, they are beasts of burden, they are there to create wealth for somebody else, for a tiny minority. That's what still prevails. And that's what we are seeing right now with the U.S., with many of those countries that have been occupying Haiti for the past 20 years. They want to maintain that on the Haitian people. And the people of Haiti are saying no. Let me break it down for you a little bit, if you allow me, for one quick minute.
Yes, sir.
What they are doing is they bring sweatshops to Haiti and using puppet governments that are very criminal in terms of killing their own people. They are forcing people to accept wages that people can't live on. Imagine working for $5 a day, for a 10-hour day. And gasoline is very expensive in Haiti, close to $5, $5 a gallon. And you are only making $5 a day. Food is very expensive in Haiti because most of the food is imported, and it's imported by that same ruling elite, that same ruling economic elite, and they raise the prices as much as they want. So many people, after they finish working in those factories, they have nothing. Our peasant farmers, They work, and yet what they produce, they cannot even sell because of that unfair competition from abroad. The government is not supporting them at all. So it's that same mentality, but Haiti, the labor of our people, the repression, preventing our people from negotiating fair wages or negotiating or having a seat at the table to make decisions as to the schools they want, because people pay a lot of taxes to the government in Haiti. Yet they do not see the fruit of all their taxes in the form of schools, in the form of hospitals, in the form of credit for our farmers, or infrastructure such as waterworks for our people. And so this is really has resulted in standard of living that are so miserable and so low that has resulted in the life expectancy of our people to be, depending on the statistics, it's about 48, I've heard 46 years. This is terrible, and this is what's going on. That's why Haitians are fleeing Haiti. And when people take to the streets and are protesting these conditions, then they are massacred, they are brutally repressed, and this occupation by the foreign forces in Haiti that is continuing to today is what they do to our people when our people are out there peacefully protesting. That's what's going on.
Let me fill the people in a little bit. On October 7th, the United States government, along with the UN, approved of a invasion force, a mercenary force to come from Kenya, who accepted the pledge. If I understand correctly, things are going wrong with it, but there was a planned invasion where Kenya was going to basically be the face of it. Can you speak to what is going on with that, and where's it at now, and how does Haiti feel about it?
Again, let me re-emphasize for people that the occupation that took place after the coup d'etat of 2004 continues to today. And Haiti has been under foreign occupation and domination. There are 9 entities that control Haiti. And the 9 entities are, you have 5 countries: Brazil, the US, France, Canada, Germany, Spain, and you also have the representative of the United Nations, representative of the European Union, representative of the OAS. Those 9 make the day-to-day decisions. However, the way the racist power structure works in Haiti, they want black faces to be in the front, so that they have a puppet like first Martelly, later on Jovenel Moïse, and now Ariel Henry, who has quote-unquote resigned. It's still not clear. And that's the black face. They say, well, Haiti is independent. And that's what they are pushing. So now, you were in Haiti, JR, and you remember MINUSTA. Those were the UN troops. And they committed massacres in Haiti from the time they landed until I think most of them left in 2017. However, there is still a force there. They are training the Haitian police, but in all their brutal tactics, they are using the Haitian police to carry out a lot of the brutal repression that they have been committing. And so that occupation remains. So now, the Haitian people, repression, exploitation, that breeds resistance. People have never accepted it. People have been taking to the streets from day one and have continued their resistance. And now they feel that they need to have more boots on the ground in order to keep our people repressed and exploited. And so the next phase of it was to bring blackface troops from Kenya. And a number of countries in the Caribbean also were pressured to take part in this. And so the people of Haiti have said no to this, because we've had enough of these occupations and the so-called gang problem that is in Haiti, which is not a gang problem at all. These are death squads that are affiliated with the Haitian police, that are part of the occupation, part of the repression against the majority population. And so they want to have more of these lethal forces, more of these forces to come and kill our brothers and sisters on the ground. And that's why the Haitian people have been so opposed to this. And I thank the people of Kenya for rising up against this. People in different parts of the world have risen up because they see through that nonsense, and they are standing in solidarity with the Haitian people. And so it's still to be determined how this thing is going to, if it will happen and when it will happen, or in what form it will take place.
Well, I just want to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit about what we saw in the news. I seen the recent uprising against the death squads in Haiti. There was an assassination of a president a few years ago, a Haitian president, Jovenel Moïse, and his wife as well as the prime minister have been, talked about as being involved. Can you talk about how that situation is connected to this?
Yeah, very, very much. I mentioned Jovenel Moïse before, along with Martelly, and I will also add, after the 2004 coup d'etat, you had La Tortue, and you also had Préval. All of these were people being used by the occupation forces to repress and destroy their own people. And so the whole assassination of Jovenel Moïse, basically, it has nothing to do with the masses, with the mass grassroots movement for national liberation. That was more like a palace coup, where it was a coup among thieves, basically, people they were settling their own scores with each other. Right. Because Jovenel Moïse was a man who had been weaponizing criminals on the street, organizing them as gangs. Not just him, but it was also part of the occupation since 2004, where common criminals were organized into gangs and working with the police as a repressive force to repress the population. So it was under him that the well-known La Saline massacre. La Saline is a neighborhood in Port-au-Prince, very strong, where the people are very determined and they stand for their rights. And they were protesting the government of Jovenel Moïse. Again, the corruption and the theft of the money and their miserable conditions. And they let loose a lot of these paramilitaries, we should say, not gangs. Because gangs give the wrong impression, as if it's common criminals on the street. But these are people who have been organized to carry out systematic massacres and assassination, burning down people's homes, clearing neighborhoods, basically, for repressive purposes, but also to take over, to force people out of their communities, because a number of these communities sit on natural resources, sit on wealth that belong to the people of Haiti, but they want to clear them out as well.
Can you talk about what kind of...
So there are different things happening there.
Can you talk about what kind of wealth, what kind of natural resources? Because I don't think people have a concept when they see Haiti is promoted as poor, but they don't realize that there's an agenda at hand, because Haiti is very rich in natural resources. I know there's iridium, but what other things are there in Haiti?
Haiti has gold, copper, silver, bauxite. Haiti also has uranium, iridium. I heard recently from a geologist that Haiti has cobalt. And also, it was interesting, there is a video of a former candidate to the Senate. I believe he was candidate to Parliament, whether the Senate or the lower house, where he was giving testimony. And that's Dr. Barthelemy. He was saying how he was invited to a meeting with a number. There was some Americans there. There were a number of potential candidates for office in Haiti, where they were being promised money so that they could run, and then in exchange they would have to vote for a change in the Haitian constitution, because there is untold wealth that they needed them to change the constitution so that those foreign companies could get their hands on that wealth in a legal way. But for that, the constitution and many of the laws in Haiti would have to be changed. And they were offering them money in exchange for their pledge that they would do so once they got in office. And he pointed out further, he mentioned several areas where those so-called gangs, or let's call them paramilitary death squads, are controlling. And he said those areas are specifically have a lot of wealth. And these guys are actually the guardians of that, not for Haitian people, but for those foreign and the ruling Haitian elite conglomerate that wants to get rid of the people of Haiti. So you see, there is a lot there. There is a lot of stuff at stake here.
Democratic Party heavyweights, the Clintons, are heavily involved in Haiti, not just the Billary connection, but also Hillary's family. She has a brother that owns mines in Haiti. Can you talk a little bit about what's the history of the Clintons in Haiti?
Oh, yes. No, definitely. The brother, I believe, has since deceased. He's now deceased. But he had the claim for one of the gold mines in Haiti, was part of a group that had that. Also, the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Bush Foundation, took over they were in charge of the funds, close to $11 billion. No one knows for sure how much money it was, but it was $11 billion. Then there was the Petro-Caribe money. The Petro was another $4 billion that Venezuela had provided to Haiti in the form of oil, petroleum. So Haiti would get it at lower than market rate, but it would sell it at market rate, and the balance, the profits, were to be invested in rebuilding the country, building infrastructure, building hospitals, schools, and other things that people needed, clean sources of drinking water. But all of that money, combined, some people claim 14 billion, others 16, nobody knows. You go to Haiti, you don't see where any of this money has gone, except in the pockets of some of the members of the elite, some of it, but the bulk of the money, you don't see any trace of it in Haiti. And people were furious and took to the streets repeatedly, demanding an accounting. And as a result, there were a number of people named in the scandal was so big that recently there have been UN reports, and U.S. State Department has also taken sanctions against members of the Haitian oligarchy after years of people denouncing them, and Haitian politicians, one, for corruption, the theft of some of this money, and two, for their ties with the gangs, the so-called gangs, that they were financing, they were supporting, and the gangs that they had recruited and helped put together. We were talking about Jovenel Moïse, and let me say this. Can you imagine the Federation, one of the guys being named, his name is Jimmy Cherizier, nicknamed Barbecue. He put together a federation of gangs, but he wasn't the one who put it together. According to an official in the Haitian government in charge of disarmament, he said that they were the ones who actually federated those gangs and put him in charge of that federation of gangs, of paramilitary death squads. And the Haitian government even issued them, recognized them as a non-profit, gave them non-profit status. And one of the diplomats, Helen Lalim, who was the representative of UN Secretary Antonio Guterres in October 2020, she spoke very positively of this federation of gangs, while they were out there at the same time conducting massacres against the people of Bel Air. So Haitians are not fooled by any of this. But this wasn't reported in the media, even though she made that public pronouncement. And recently we are seeing also a former ambassador, Ambassador Pamela White. She gave an interview over the weekend, probably on Friday, where she is actually praising a man named Guy Philippe, who was one of the people who worked to overthrow President Aristide and conducted a series of massacres. And his men were also involved in raping and massacring people and burning police stations and killing policemen and women. And so the worst kinds of stuff that you can imagine. About 10,000 people were killed during that coup d'etat of 2004. And here was this woman, this diplomat, former ambassador, praising these guys, and being part of the movement, really for them to be in charge today, being part of the discussion about Haiti. So Haitians are outraged hearing this stuff.
What is the role of people in the United States that are concerned? What is it that we can do?
First thing is people need to get the information, because without information, again, as you mentioned earlier, Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The Haitians can get it together. You know, all of these lies and everything, people are confused. And if people want to help, they don't know where to begin. So the people of Haiti have had a plan that they've been implementing ever since we got rid of the Duvaliers. And this plan initially put together by the organization, the political organization Famille Lavalas political organization, headed by President Aristide. The plan was called Investing in People. So we are talking about 20-some years ago. And it was being implemented. What it was, it is to take stock of the resources of the country, of the people of the country, and investing those resources to the benefit of the people. Concretely, that means building schools, building hospitals, having clean drinking water for the population, providing our young men and young women with a way to take their talent and their energies and their creativity and invest that to develop the country. Taking stock of all the natural resources, and so that the benefits from that could come back to improve the well-being, the welfare of the population. This is what Famille Lavalas was working on when it was in the government. And this is what the Bush administration, Bush the son, destroyed in Haiti and have been destroying for the past 20 years. All the gains of the movement have been destroyed. Now, secondly, what's going on again, 5 years ago, the Famille Lavalas political organization issued a call to resolve the crisis in Haiti. There were other groups that had issued other calls, but this one was a well-thought-out plan to get us out of this cycle of corruption and repression that is destroying the social fabric in Haiti, that is destroying the Haitian nation. And so it called for a government of salut public. Salut public means government for the safety of the public, in which that the president at the time, Jovenel Moïse, and the corrupt prime minister who would step out of the way, would resign, and a new government would be put in place composed of different representatives of the various sectors of society, but people known for their honesty, their integrity, their competency, and to really take stock of what's going on, take control of our institutions that had been so destroyed. We are talking about the justice system, the school system, the healthcare system, all of these institutions, to make them work again, to benefit the population, and then put together the basis for election, true election, not the kind of nonsense that the United Nations was giving us, fraudulent elections. Real elections where one person, one vote would actually be implemented, and then so that the country could start rebuilding itself. But what has happened? The U.S. has been, France, Canada, the core group, and as the Haitian people calls it, the core gang, because people identify them with those gangs that are killing them in the streets of Haiti. And people felt that with that we could really get the country moving again. And that's the plan. Those are the things that people outside of Haiti need to know, that there are capable people, there is a population that is mobilized and ready to rebuild Haiti, and they've shown that over and over again whenever they have the chance to emerge and the country starts being on the path of development. I want to say this, Gerald. Many people don't know. When the Lavalas government was in power in Haiti, President Aristide, Haitians who were forced out of Haiti, forced to be refugees, were actually returning home and investing in Haiti. We were not there yet where we wanted to be, but we were close. We were marching towards a beautiful, peaceful, healthy, proud Haiti that would give food to its people and provide people with a life of dignity. But then Bush the son, after that coup, aided by France and Canada and all those nations, then now we've seen this massive exodus of Haitian people fleeing, going wherever they can to seek safety and shelter, and still they are being brutalized, as we see on the Mexico border, Mexico-U.S. border, many of the Caribbean nations, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, being brutalized and killed and what have you, and being treated worse than animals. And so that's what we, the Haitian people, so our people have a plan. And you mentioned earlier, in terms of providing security, in many places in Haiti, people have shown that the few decent cops that there are, the honest cops that are there, in places where they have worked with the population, that they were able to bring all of that under control. And people can do it in Haiti. But what you have an upper structure of corrupt leaders at the top, imposed, installed, put in power by the U.S., France, Canada, among the leaders of the core group. And these people are really the problem. And so once people realize that, then they can be in solidarity with the people of Haiti and support our struggle for national liberation.
If people would like to get in touch more with the Haiti Action Committee and the work that you're doing, how do they do that?
Yes, people can contact us on our website is HaitiSolidarity.net, HaitiSolidarity.net. People can also contact us through the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund. It's HaitiEmergencyRelief.org. And also we're having an event with two Lavalas leaders, two members of the executive committee of Famille Lavalas political organization. This is taking place on Saturday, April 6th from 1 to 3 p.m. It will be live streamed also. So for people living in the Bay Area, it will be at Eastside Arts Alliance, and from 1 to 3 p.m. Saturday, April 6th. And it will also be live streamed. But if people go on our website, they can get the information and get how to view this program.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Pierre Labossiere, for coming on the program. I admired your work for many years. You've taught me a lot, along with the organization Haiti Action and the Haiti Relief crew. I appreciate y'all, and I'm telling the world, please do what you can to support our brothers and sisters in Haiti.
Thank you very much, JR. Your solidarity means a lot, and we really appreciate you. Thank you.
You are listening to the Minister of Information, JR. For Black Report Radio, we signing out.
In closing, we'd like to thank our guest, Stephanie Jones Rogers from the University of California at Berkeley. Find a Black-owned bookstore near you and get her book, They Were Her Problem: White Women as Slave Owners in the American South. Next up, we thank Brother JR and Black Report Radio for bringing us a great interview featuring co-founder of the Haitian Action Committee, Pierre Labossiere. Finally, we thank our dear brother Mumia Abu Jamal and Prison Radio for keeping us informed as always. Shout out to Dr. Gerald Horne for doing what he does best and guiding this train of mental liberation towards Pan-African enlightenment for yet another Saturday. Hit up your favorite bookstore right now and find one of Dr. Horne's many informative texts to enrich your library and your mind. Word to producer Sister Tej. Much love to our spiritual backbone, Baba Didan Kumathi. Abundant thanks to our marvelous engineer. And last but certainly not least, thanks to all of our loyal listeners and supporters out there. It takes a village to build a revolution, and Freedom Now is a village to be reckoned with. This has been Brother Brandon Sankara, and you can join us on Facebook at Freedom Now Gerald Horne. You can email the program at freedomnow@kpfk.org. or go online to our audio archives at kpfk.org. Scroll down to find Freedom Now, and you'll be able to hear this program as well as 60 days worth of prior programming here at KPFK 90.7 FM. We now send you off to our sister Assumpta with Spotlight Africa, coming up next, addressing issues facing Mama Africa. And until next Saturday here at Freedom Now, we stand running our marathon, ready for revolution.